So my first experience working with TypeScript was within an Angular context, and you know what? It's just a way better language than JavaScript, and today we're going to talk about why that is and why, honestly, I just think we should just stop working with JavaScript and do everything with TypeScript. So let's have a look. Good afternoon everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So if you've never worked with TypeScript, or if you've never actually looked at what it is, basically what it comes down to is it's pretty much JavaScript with strong typing. And it's not just ES5, which is the standard that is supported by basically every browser. It's generally whatever the latest standard of EcmaScript is. So what is that, like 7 or something? I don't know. I don't keep that up to date with whatever the latest web dev technologies are. I just work on whatever's popular at the time. So basically TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. So every bit of JavaScript that you write can be run in the TypeScript compiler, but it may give you some warnings with certain things that are not recommended with TypeScript. And it's pretty much just that plus types. So you may be asking, why would you want types with JavaScript? Isn't that one of the benefits of having a loosely typed language? And if you're one of those people, then this video is definitely not for you, because I really don't like loosely typed languages. So the most obvious benefit of having a language that is strongly typed, like Java, C++, C#, anything like that, is that it makes doing autofills so much easier. So when you run, say, C# in a IDE, it's not going to be like, I have no idea what methods this class have. And same with like C++ or pretty much any strongly typed language. But when you're writing JavaScript, because of the fact that you don't actually know what keys are available at compile time, you can't really determine what functions a class should have unless they have functions that are built into the language. And that typically just comes from the fact that whatever you're working with also supports TypeScript, so it knows what functions the inbuilt classes actually have. So the benefit of that is that it reduces a lot of the simple mistakes where you just don't know what a method is called on a class. Take C# for example. If your IDE can't autofill a method, then it probably means that that class doesn't have that method. Whereas if you're just working with, say, ES5 or something like that, you don't really have the ability to do that. It works sometimes, but most of the time you're kind of just relying on guesswork or the documentation that's available, unless you have access to the source code, in which case you can dig through that, but that's just not a convenient way to work. So one of the other benefits that comes with TypeScript is return types. And for similar reasons why autofilling is useful, return types are nice because it lets you know exactly what you're going to get back from a function. So instead of trying to do guesswork and then trying to determine it at runtime with just some bit of like hacky code, you know exactly what you're going to get back, and it makes it a lot easier to work with. So because I said that JavaScript is fully compatible with TypeScript, it still does have an any type. So if you do want, say, you're bringing in some JSON data and you want that to be an any type, which generally you'd want to, because I don't think it actually gives you a proper return type, then you can do that. You still have access to that any type in the occasions where you need it, but there's a lot of times when you don't actually need just this generic data. You can actually structure it in a way that makes it a lot easier to work with. And by structuring the data like that, it also gives you access to compile time type checking. So in JavaScript, you're probably going to be doing this anyway, where you're going to be checking if a key is available on an object before you actually try to use it. Whereas with TypeScript, if you're using classes, you don't actually need to worry about this because the compiler can do this for you. So if you know you're going to have a very specific type of data, so say you have like a person object that has like an ID, a name, and an email address, for example. If you were to do this in JavaScript, you would actually have to make sure that these exist. Whereas with TypeScript, you don't have that issue because you are certain that that data can exist on that object. Obviously, you still have to check for like undefines and things, but you're certain that those keys exist, so you don't have to worry about actually running into any errors there. So this isn't really a benefit of TypeScript, but if you do want to be using the cutting edge features of EcmaScript, then you're going to have to be using a transpiler anyway. So whether that's Babel or just anything else, you're going to have to be using a transpiler, so there's not really any extra work adding in something like TypeScript. So this next point isn't a benefit of TypeScript, it's more about looking at it as a career opportunity. So occasionally you'll see these articles like TypeScript is dead, TypeScript is dying, TypeScript is going away. And the thing is, it's really not. So if you look at Google Trends, for example, it seems to be on a general trend upwards, with occasional dips that tend to align with Angular releases, because that seems to be the biggest framework that actually makes use of TypeScript by default. You can get TypeScript working with React, but because it uses Babel, there were troubles with that in the past, but that's stopped being as much of an issue now, and you can actually do React with TypeScript. So that's not relevant to the point I was making, but basically TypeScript is on a general trend upwards, and I think that is just with a general trend upwards of web development as a career path, I guess. And even when it does start dying down, like jQuery, there's going to be a lot of legacy projects that make use of it, and especially because of strong typing, you're not going to have people moving back to EcmaScript in that case. So I think that for a very long time, TypeScript, even when it stops being a popular way to actually write new code, there's going to be a lot of legacy applications that have been built with it, and it's going to be a very good career opportunity for a very long time, especially as long as Angular keeps it as a default. When Angular dies down, then maybe we have an issue, but because of its Microsoft backing, I don't really see that happening anytime soon. If it does die down, what they'll probably do is just run up a new framework, and then that ends up being popular. So to be completely fair, I'm not saying that TypeScript is the only way to do strict typing with JavaScript. There are other options. Some of them are popular and some of them aren't. Some of them have their benefits and their weaknesses, but TypeScript seems to be the most popular way to do it, with Flow being the second most. And that is more of just a type checker, whereas TypeScript is a transpiler, and I don't remember the other thing that is. Other options are things like PureScript. I'm not sure how popular that is nowadays, but it does still seem to be getting a little bit of use. You also have the option of using ReasonML and Elm. I've never actually run into these in the wild before, so I don't know the popularity of these projects. Maybe some people have worked with them and had good experiences with them. Personally, I would steer clear of these smaller projects. I would recommend sticking with things like Flow and TypeScript, things that are actually being used for massive projects, if you actually want to use it as a career opportunity. If you want to just experiment with different strict typing methods in JavaScript, I guess give them a shot. So if you are interested in trying out TypeScript, there's a couple of different ways you can go about doing it. So if you come over to the TypeScript website, then you have this thing called the TypeScript Playground, where you can basically just play around with a bit of TypeScript code before you go and work on any proper projects. You can also come in and change a different version of it if you want to work with an older version, or just if you want to work with a nightly build. So there's also the installation guide available on the TypeScript page, and this basically just takes you through how to actually install and get started with your first TypeScript program. And the other options are you can install Create React App and get it working with TypeScript, or my suggestion is install the Angular CLI and get started on a Angular project, because I much prefer Angular. It's a way better way to actually build web applications than React. I might do a video about that at some point, but for now, just, I guess you can take my word. So I'm not saying that there's absolutely no place for JavaScript in the web development environment, but I think it should be mainly relegated for framework development, and I think most projects should probably just be using TypeScript. Obviously, JavaScript is still a good teaching tool for when you first get started with doing web development, like with HTML and CSS. Generally, you don't write HTML when you're doing a project, and generally you don't write CSS. You will use some form to generate HTML, and if you do write CSS, you're probably writing it with less or Sass or something like that. And I think that it would be a good idea to take JavaScript down that path, at least until we get to WebAssembly one day. So if you like this video, remember to smash that like button and leave me a comment down below, letting me know what you think. If you completely disagree with me, let me know. I'm happy to hear what people have to say. So if you want to see updates when new videos come out, remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below, and you'll probably get updates, but we can never actually trust YouTube to push updates to anyone. So go follow my Twitter and my Mastodon, and you'll probably get updates there. So up on the screen now, there should be my developer discussions playlist. So if you want to see more videos like this, go check that out, and maybe you'll find something that interests you. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, and I'm out.